Montiel is a red. Subject to medical. Welcome to your Forest News. Good morning, good evening, or good night, wherever in the world you are, whatever time of day you're watching this. Hope you're having a fantastic day. And welcome to your latest Nottingham Forest transfer news. There is a lot to talk about today. Coming up in today's video, we'll be talking about the impending arrival of the new right back. What does that mean for Serge Aurier? Are the Saudi links true? We'll get into all of that. We've got Dominguez still very heavily linked to Nottingham Forest. And we've got talks on some departures that will probably cheer all of you. I've had so many messages saying I'll pay for the taxi. We'll get into all of that and plenty of other news. So don't forget, if you haven't already, hit that like button if you'd be so kind. Subscribe to Forest Fan TV if you are new. And don't forget to go and get your signed framed Forest shirt from our friends at Football Prizes. It's either the Wolves guys that are going to win it or the Forest guys are going to win it. Have a look at this bad boy. Make sure you go and grab your tickets for that. You've got until Thursday. Let's jump into the news, and we can only start in one place, and that's with the new right back. All right, guys, so let's jump into it and talk about Gonzalo Montiel, who is having his medical today at Nottingham Forest. Fees have been agreed with the club. Now, a lot of you have been asking me, well, what is the agreement? Someone's saying loan, someone's saying loan to buy, obligation to buy. Is it straight up cash? Well, it looks like a good deal is being put in place by Nottingham Forest. The fee itself is going to be around 9 to 10 million pounds, but it will be a loan with an obligation to buy. Now, these obligation to buy deals tend to come with some kind of clause. Usually, as we saw with Chris Wood, a set amount of games that need to happen before it's triggered. So I would assume, I don't know, I haven't seen the contract, that there will be some kind of clause in it just like that. So I expect that to be the structure of the deal. And we all know he comes with his pedigrees. He's obviously infamously scored the winning penalty in the World Cup in Qatar last year, and he's a decent right back in general. But it does bring the question on about what happens with the rest of our right backs. Now, what I will say before I move on to talk about Aurier, etc., is there have been these scandals in the paper about him. And I can tell you with really good authority, they're nothing to worry about. At the moment, it just seems like rumours being slung around, all of it's alleged. But what I will say is Forest would have done their due diligence and made sure that there is nothing that could come back and bite them in the backside on this one. So, yes, I know sometimes Forest have made mistakes with transfers, etc. And even medicals, we've seen it with Omar Richards. But with this one, I feel very confident that any of these so-called allegations are not going to be a problem whatsoever. So I'm reassured by it. So my message to you guys is don't worry about that at all. Because again, a few of you have been asking me some questions on that. But moving on, he's a good right back. I think he'll do a good job. He's very good at pressing the ball. I feel like he can get too tight sometimes on an attacker and may be turned quite easily at Premier League level. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But yesterday I wasn't too excited about this one because I was looking at it thinking, do we need him? Is he really a priority? I would still say no. I would still say my priorities are CDM, another centre back, another backup striker, those positions that we've talked through till we're kind of blue in the face. But the question is about Aurier now. Is Aurier actually leaving Nottingham Forest? We've told you all summer there have been some very loose links to the Saudi League, and it seems like El Hilal is the club that is sniffing at Aurier. There's talks of £25 million for him. Now, if that was to be true, and I'll say now the sources to me aren't strong enough. I'll believe them once they get sourced better. But let's assume that it is true. This would be fantastic business for Nottingham Forest. I love Aurier. I think he was one of our best players in the first half of the last year. But he is coming into his 30s now. He does have the odd mistake in him. We saw that against Fulham, for example, last season. Positionally, he was a bit caught out and gets out jumped sometimes at the back post. But he's brilliant. But if Forest can get 25 million for him, spend 10 million on Montiel, and not have to pay it till next year, kind of kick the can down the road, that 25 million that we get for Aurier probably will be, because it's the Saudis, man. It could be cash up front or it will be heavily cash up front. And that's going to go very well on the FFP. And even if you want to take the 9 million out for Montiel from it, you're still left with huge net profit on it. So as much as I would love Aurier to stay, because I really do rate him, financially, this deal just makes too much sense if it's true. And again, I'll reiterate, the sources aren't that great. But you have to start kind of putting and adding the numbers together. Why would Forest suddenly prioritize a right back when we've got 4 or 5 of them already in the club? Aurier, Biancone, Williams, you've got, who else you got? I mean, even Drager you could add in there. There's plenty of right backs currently in the team that we could use, and that's why this isn't a priority for me. But you add in the Saudi money, and come on, let's get a taste of that, man. Chelsea have taken plenty of it. Why can't we have some of that? I think this deal could make even more sense than it currently does. But what are your thoughts on it? Let me know in the comments down below. What do you think of the player? And what do you think of the potential? And it's rumours, But as always, we're here to talk about whatever's being talked about in Nottingham Forest. Get your thoughts in on all of that down below. Let's move on to item number 2, and it's more good news stories. Now, I will start off by saying this isn't exactly ironclad, but Jonjo Shelvey is being linked to Leeds United. And I don't care if the postman is the one who has sourced this one. It's exciting enough to bring it up. And it would make some form of sense. Why? Because Leeds have just lost Tyler Adams. Leeds of losing Nonto seems to be on strike, rejecting Everton, which is hilarious. It seems to be losing more players than they can bring in. But remember, Leeds have had parachute payments because they've obviously were in the Premier League last season. So coming down into the Championship, they'd be one of a few clubs that could risk taking on somewhat high wages of the likes of Jonjo Shelvey. And honestly, as much as an asshole as he is, I still think there is a player in there. Maybe not at Premier League level. We discovered that ourselves last year. But he did have some moments. I remember the Fulham match. Again, I'll refer back to that one. He looked good when he came on. Outside of that, his only assists were ever to the opposition. But you have to grant that at Championship level, he will be absolutely fine. And he's played there before for Newcastle. So it's something that may happen. And I could see this one happening. And I don't want to get excited. I don't want to get ahead of myself. That's my new kind of philosophy for this transfer window. But I think, again, if Forest can move Shelvey on and recreate some of the harmony, because clearly it's causing a bit of imbalance, then I think this deal is well worth doing. And I think Leeds would do okay with him. I really do. Because they're a bunch of assholes. You might as well, fit one with the other. So I could see this happening if the rumours are true. But of course, if they're not, then who knows? But how do you guys feel about Jonjo going? I've had so many messages from you guys asking me how much is the taxi fare up to Leeds from Nottingham. They'll pay for it. I've had some of our boys, the Brazilian fans, messaging saying they're going to fly back just to send him there and make sure himself. Look, I think it's going a bit overboard. But in terms, again, of the harmony and the unity within the squad, this, to me, would make a lot of sense. But get your thoughts in on Jonjo down below. All right, so we've started you guys off with 2 bits of good news. Let's move on to one now. Some of you may not think is good news, but I do feel that the mood on Hendo has changed slightly because Hendo is probably going to be moved on. Now, let me very quickly get you up to speed with the last update we gave you from Hendo, was that Manchester United were not willing to sell unless they were getting a replacement goalkeeper in. And they didn't think they were going to. And if you remember, I said to you, I still think this one has legs. There's no way you're going to keep a player against his will at a football club he doesn't want to be at. So it does look like Hendo is back on the move. And there are 2 clubs interested. Obviously Nottingham Forest, but come into the fold, Crystal Palace. And Crystal Palace are now the favourites to get Hendo over the line. They will still have the same issues that Forest had with it, about the medical and the risk. Now, let me clarify one more time. Hendo can take a medical. There's no problems with him taking a medical. It's the fear of the injury happening during the medical or making his injury worse when he's this close to full health. So it still will probably be late either way. But putting that to one side, I think we've got to talk about Turner. And for me, Turner has been quite a revelation in goal. Yes, it's only been 2 games, I know, but he already looks quite commanding. He looks quite steady. You could argue, part of the reason we won 3 points against Sheffield United after the blunder between Worrell and McKenna. So I think he's been quite steady. But at the same time, you could argue Navas looked really steady when he first came in, had a man of the match performance against Leeds. And then throughout the rest of the season, we saw, those fairy liquid gloves as he was parrying things left, right, and centre. So I think it's still too early to judge Turner one way or the other. But I do think the opening signs have been really good. But Forest do still need a backup keeper. Currently, it looks like Horvath is playing that role. I'll be surprised if Horvath wants to stay as a number 2, and I think he would probably rather go back into the Championship if it meant he would get the number 1 spot back. But Forest are still interested in Hendo, and Hendo's heart still is in Forest. So for Palace to come out favourites on this currently will potentially mean that maybe because of the Matt Turner stuff, even Forest's kind of feelings towards Henderson have diminished slightly. But what I really want to know is you guys as the fan base, how are you now feeling about Henderson? Is it just been going on so long that you're sick and tired of it and we should move on and maybe upgrade Shelvey into the number 2 spot? We've still got Hennessy there, of course. Should Forest maybe go and buy a backup keeper, sell Horvath and get someone in for like 4 or 5 million? Or do you really still want Hendo in at number 1? Every opinion's welcome as always on here, so let me know how you feel about Henderson down below. Okay, so let's move on to, I'm just going to make it up now and call it a new segment. Let's call it the Roundup segment of other little kind of rumours and niggles going around. And Callum Hudson-Odoi, who was linked heavily with Fulham, is now being back open on the market. Why? Because Fulham don't want to pay the 8 million that Chelsea have quoted them. And it's still rumoured that Forest are interested in Callum Hudson-Odoi. I don't know if we really need him now that we got Elanga in there. Again, it may be because of the whole Brennan Johnson situation. There are talks that Brennan Johnson would prefer Spurs over Chelsea and things like that. This is all paper talk. This is probably all agent talk and things like that. I still think for me, if Jono's going to go, he's better suited with a Villa. I think Villa matches him quite nicely. But will Villa stump up the cash? We know they're quite rich as a club. But we also know that the lure of Chelsea and the lure of Spurs and London is still there as well. So, is Jono going? The answer is we still don't know. I think my personal opinion is we will see him leave before the end of the window. Again, going back to the whole financial side of things that we've been talking to you about throughout the whole summer, and in particular about Brennan Johnson. But as always, get your thoughts in on those two stories. Would you like to see Callum Hudson-Odoi there or not? Also, Dominguez is still looking really good for Nottingham Forest. That's progressing. It should probably be the next deal if it's going to happen after we get the right back done and dusted. And I expect that one to be done hopefully in the next 24 hours or so. But as things stand, it is a here we go on Gonzalo Montiel. I want your thoughts in down below. And if you haven't already, please don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to Forest Fan TV if you are new. That brings you up to date with your latest Nottingham Forest transfer news. We'll catch you on the next video. And as always, come on you Reds.